Dandadan's one flaw just got painfully worse, and everyone, including the voice of Okarune, hates the new chapter because of it. But what if I told you that Dandadan's biggest flaw could lead to the best plot twist in the entire story? In this video, I'm gonna talk about the 2 reasons Dandadan Chapter 210 got a viral reaction, discuss how the amnesia trope highlights the story's underlying flaw, but also explain why this could be the start of Dandadan's best arc ever. Just be warned that there will be major spoilers. Speaking of which, obviously the reason Dandadan went viral last week is because Momo got amnesia and forgot everyone except her grandma, including Okarune. And let's just address the elephant in the room. People are pissed about this for 2 reasons. 1, because Tatsu is using one of the most overused tropes in fiction, and 2, because fans have been waiting over a year for Okarune to officially confess to Momo, and now she has no idea who he is. And this viral reaction is completely understandable considering the hit-or-miss history of the amnesia trope and the fact that it was used right when it was time for Okarune and Momo to officially become a couple. But there's also 2 problems with the way everyone reacted. First of all, there's plenty of instances where amnesia works really well in stories, and second of all, people are losing their minds for a confession that often never happens in other manga like Dandadan. And this gives us a couple of questions to think about now that people are apparently dropping the manga. Is it really a bad thing that Momo got amnesia? And is it a bad thing that Momo and Okarune aren't officially dating already? The second question has a few things going on and it ties into the first question, so let's start with that one. Naturally, based on the recent reaction, most people would say the amnesia trope is objectively bad. In other words, no matter how well it's used, having this in the story is just an all-around bad decision. And it's understandable why people feel that way. The amnesia trope is one that has been used over and over again for years, especially on TV. And particularly in the realm of anime, it doesn't have the best history. The worst example I can think of is when Big Mom washed up on Wano and forgot who she was. The reason people reacted negatively to it back then, just like they did now, is because the amnesia trope is overused, it's a convenient way to add stakes where there weren't any, and honestly, it's just really lame. Like, as a One Piece fan, seeing one of the 4 emperors bonk her head and completely forget who she is kind of lowers how you view her as a threat. Obviously, Momo serves a completely different role than Big Mom, but it still feels cheap to have her tied into such an overused trope. But that's the thing about tropes. Just because they're common doesn't mean they're bad. In fact, that's the whole idea of a trope. It's a theme or tool that is so common in writing that it's practically impossible to avoid it. And in a lot of cases, this particular trope is painfully bad, but there's a lot of other cases where it makes for unforgettable characters, pun intended. Baldur's Gate 3 is a game praised for its incredible writing, and it has at least 2 characters with amnesia. One of the main characters of the new manga Galaxius has amnesia, and I had completely forgotten about this one until Almighty Piccolo on Twitter reminded me, but Ellie from Rave Master is another great example of amnesia done right. Now, all of these examples I've mentioned have one thing in common. These are all characters that already had amnesia when we met them. Usually the bad examples of amnesia take place well after we've met a character, but introducing a character with amnesia makes them mysterious and makes learning about their past all the more rewarding. Now, obviously, Momo doesn't fall into this second category, which is why so many people were immediately upset, but this doesn't mean that there isn't a similar level of potential for character growth. Usually, when we meet a character with amnesia, they go through an arc of making new friends and then finding a new appreciation for those friends as they regain their memories. And this is exactly what Tatsu set up in the recent chapters. We were at a peak of character chemistry when everyone was working together, and Okarune was going to confess to Momo again, but then she reached an all-time low when nobody could see her. She was by herself, and for the first time, Momo experienced true loneliness. It's only after she reaches her lowest moment when Momo is finally saved at the cost of her memories. So obviously, however it's done, Momo regaining her memories will be a great opportunity for character growth, where she rediscovers the friends that she felt like she had already lost. But there's an even greater layer to this that's already been hinted at, and it involves Okarune. Momo says aliens aren't real, heavily implying that her amnesia reaches all the way back to the very beginning of episode 1. Obviously, the immediate takeaway is that Okarune is the key to restoring Momo's memories. But something nobody is asking is, why was Momo reset to this exact moment? Why specifically the time she met Okarune? Again, it probably has to do with Okarune being the trigger, but there's a serious chance that Tatsu is setting things up so that Okarune and Momo will relive that first episode, which is why this use of amnesia has a lot more potential than we're giving it credit for. And it all has to do with one simple question. Was it pure luck that Momo and Okarune ended up together? This is something that you normally wouldn't think about because the two characters are such a good match. But when it comes to any couple, there's always an element of timing. I mean, Okarune and Momo were already classmates, and Momo just happened to pick out Okarune by chance. What if she never did? Or what if they had their bet but they never met Turbo Granny or the aliens? What this amnesia does is give Okarune and Momo the chance to prove that what they have isn't just an accident. It isn't something that was just the right thing at the right time. As Okarune inevitably restores Momo's memories, he'll be proving to her and himself that what they have is something much stronger, which is perfect timing considering Okarune was just about to tell Momo that he really does love her. In this way, Okarune's confession will feel completely earned because he'll be proving beyond a doubt that he and Momo belong together. Now, that's why I think the amnesia trope has a lot more potential than people are giving it credit for, but like I said, that's not the only reason people are upset about the new chapter. Part of it is the amnesia trope, but the other part is the simple fact that Tatsu has once again delayed the confession that we've been waiting a very long time for. Like, as great as it is that Okarune and Momo can relive the first episode, that doesn't change the fact that we now have to wait another 5, 10, or even 20 chapters to see them become a real couple. We waited years just to see them hold hands. Then we waited like a year after Momo wrote that letter for Okarune. And now it's been at least a year since Okarune technically confessed to Momo in the Donmara arc, and nothing has changed between them. There's been a slow shift in attitude among many fans from loving all of these cute moments like holding hands, to now people really feel entitled to an official confession given how long it's been. And the reason this continues to annoy fans has to do with Dandadan's only real flaw in the story: the fact that it's a romance that tries not to be a romance. Dandadan isn't technically a shonen because it's in Jump Plus and not the main magazine, but it's basically a shonen. And in every shonen, especially in Shonen Jump, romantic plot lines are very slow and rarely turn into anything real until the very end of the story. Anime fans have seen it so many times that they're mostly desensitized. But that's the thing. Dandadan is not like other shonen. It's not like My Hero Academia or Black Clover, where the main characters want to be the hero king and they are oblivious to the anime girl that is hopelessly in love with them. Dandadan has been all about the romance since day one. It's a large part of how it's marketed, and it's why most fans read the story. But it's not the only reason. The other reason is obviously all of the action. And especially now that Saint Germain is in the plot, the action is becoming more and more of the story. And on top of that, you have Tatsu continuously building up the official confession by delaying it every time we think it's gonna happen. Which brings us to the uniquely frustrating position where Tatsu hasn't abandoned the romance, but he continues to put it on hold while he develops the rest of the plot, and fans grow more and more impatient because they got into the story for a very specific end result that continuously gets deflected and delayed. Naturally, these delays have everyone asking basically the same thing. Regardless of how well written it is, regardless of how it impacts Okarune and Momo, is this recent delay to Okarune's official confession redeemable, or is it an objectively bad choice that only only makes the story's one flaw even worse. Honestly, this depends on who you ask. If you ask someone who really just wants to see Okarun and Momo date before the story ends, then obviously they're gonna say this is just an all-around bad choice. But as I suspect a lot of people will think down the line, I would argue this isn't an objectively bad choice. Of course, if nothing else happens and all it did was delay payoff, then I'm gonna say it was stupid. But if it leads to that character growth, if we see something like Okarun and Momo reliving episode 1 and Okarun earning that confession, then I would argue the payoff was worth the delay. It would make up for all of the time spent waiting for Okarun and Momo to be together, and would fix Dandadan's only real flaw of delaying this moment in a fun and unexpected way. And while we're still on the topic, I also think this could be the start of Dandadan's final arc, namely the final battle against Count Saint Germain. Because people have been talking about when Dandadan is going to end, and somewhere between chapter 300 and chapter 350 is a realistic number. Assuming this is coming up, and knowing that Count Saint Germain wants to steal her powers, what would be better than using this amnesia to his advantage? I am willing to bet that Count Saint Germain is going to make a deal like he's made in the past. Specifically, he's going to approach Momo at a time where everyone has tried to help her but nothing is working. He will then offer to restore her memories if she agrees to give up her powers. Alternatively, someone like Okarun could agree to a deal, volunteering their powers so that Momo can get her memories back. This would be the opening Count Saint Germain's been waiting for, and would also serve as the perfect transition into the final arc, now that he would hypothetically have everything he needs for the Dandadan. That is just my theory, but I bring it up to show that there's a lot more potential for this amnesia than people realize. To be fair, this is a clear sign of Dandadan's one flaw in that it sells you on romance, but repeatedly delays romantic payoff. But as we've seen, there's still plenty of potential for Okarun and Momo to grow as characters and to have a stepping point in their relationship that feels completely earned. That is why we should all remember that Tatsu has never let us down and just let the man cook.